have at the same time the two largest generations in American history buying or not buying houses. Millennials got delayed and they're either buying their first time homes now or they're upgrading. And baby boomers are dying in place now that inventory is not getting loosened up.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing podcast. This is the show where we teach you to make massive income, not just passive income with your real estate investing business. And these Wednesday shows, it's only a new name. We used to call it the Mike and Dan show. Now it's the Mike, Dan, and Dylan show, as I, Mike DeHaan, here with my co-hosts, Dan Austin and Dylan Cook, are here to talk about real estate investing, business, and whatever else we feel like for the week. And I know to start off, Dylan, as Dan put it, as we were discussing before the show, you want to throw a grenade in the room and then see what happens, because you had a great topic that you want to dive into to get us started today.
Yeah, no. So I'm happy to see what happens here. But essentially, I don't listen to Bigger Pockets much anymore, but they threw out an interesting topic on the podcast recently that was basically buying a business versus buying real estate and what's the best option to do right now.
Okay. And was this on the main show with is it David
main
Green
show? Yeah. And they, they reference the Cody Sanchez's of the world, kind of promoting that. You have the baby boomers who are still dying. Not only do you need to sell their houses, but they also need to sell their businesses. Yeah. Right. And the whole, glamour to this is, you can buy one for 3 times sales. And you're automatically making 100,000 a year for 25 grand or whatever it may be. So would love to know your guys' thoughts around that whole topic in general.
Sure. So before Dan goes off, he's already getting a little blue in the face. If you want to go,
I'll go. PC. I'll be PC.
The thing that I think is really interesting, though, about this whole conversation in general, because it's a recurring thing. If you've been anywhere in the business social media content sphere, you've heard the buying a business conversation come up at this point. If you haven't heard that, then I guess I don't know what to tell you. It's just everywhere. But it honestly right now, the challenge is it's such an oversimplification of how complex business is. It makes it just seem like it's this easy thing. What it actually feels like to me is if you go back to 2016, 2018, when real estate really started becoming a common sort of thing that everyone was considering, everyone was trying to get into. And people compared it to buying stocks, right? And they viewed the growth of real estate as completely passive, like you view with buying securities, buying stocks, buying ETFs, things like that. And all the real estate people would be like, well, no, there's more work that goes into it. You got to manage the property, you got to, maintain the property, you got to find tenants, you got to do all this sort of stuff. But you still had all the influencers out there that were like, not if you do it right, it's really easy, blah, blah. And then now those of us that have bought into that several years later are here to say it's definitely not as simple as just buying stocks. There is a lot more shit that goes into it and maintaining these assets, right? Now we have the exact same effect where you have the assets of businesses that are now competing with real estate as the passive thing. And you have these big names, who I'm big fans of too, by the way, Alex Hormozi, Cody Sanchez, these sort of people that are talking about business tactics and business growth as maybe they oversimplify it. And so now you have all these ignorant people that are coming in with these ridiculous statements and goals of saying things like, I'm going to buy a small business that's going to give me enough passive income to leave my W-2. When those of us that are in business, we know that's bullshit. But for some reason, I don't know, the general public just doesn't believe you. They feel like they're going to be the exception. They're going to be the dream sort of scenario that somehow discovers this golden goose that is a fully passive, high cash flow business that they can just buy.
Let's be honest here. Most people suck at being business owners. Most people suck at owning rental properties. I mean, there's months and years where I've kind of sucked at owning. I suck at owning some properties right now. I'll be honest, they're not getting my full attention. But also people that run businesses just generally aren't good at it. And they're basically creating themselves a job. My wife and I went to an ice cream store out where we grew up, and they opened it maybe a year ago. And we're like, oh, this is cool. They did a good job. They had a lot of good stuff going on there. It was going to be great for the community. It's the only ice cream store in the small, literally we have one grocery store in the community. It's a real small community that we grew up in. And then we went there this year after like our nephew's baseball game, went in there and we're like, wow, this place is run down. In 12 months, this person took a business and just ran it into the ground, and it's probably going to close in the next 6 months, right? And so most people, that's what most businesses that we're buying from baby boomers are. And also, if you don't know shit about running the business, what makes you think you can buy an HVAC business from a dude who's done it for 40 years and knows how to actually work on the shit and has scaled it to $10 million and he gets to sell it? Like, you probably can't actually run that business successfully, and you probably shouldn't. And there's no such thing as a passive income investment when it comes to businesses like that. Like, you're going to have to work in it.
And that's exactly the thing, is you have these people that are like, middle management at some company, they make like $80, $100, $120,000 a year. And they now think that they're going to be able to come in and buy this quote unquote boring business that's, it's like a trade or it's a services business or all the things they tell you to look for, and just suddenly be able to like run like a team that has like specializations that are required. They're going to somehow know how to like manage the HR and the finance and build the customer success and, like establish a CRM that they don't have, because that's the opportunity. They don't have tech. You just have to come and put in tech. If you've never fucking put tech into a business before, you don't know what that means.
It's so hard. We've tried it so many times.
My favorite, actually, that sprung a memory, was look for businesses that still use faxing machines. That was their tagline for some of these places, because that's the ones that are still, quote unquote outdated, even though they're probably making $300,000 to $400,000 a year.
So that reminds, when my wife, the company she worked at, they acquired a distributor, right? Like an actual, they distributed products to coffee shops and stuff like that. And most of the employees were like in their early 70s. And everything was done by pen and paper. So obviously the opportunity in the acquisition was to put in systems and use things like QuickBooks. Guess how that goes over with a bunch of 70-year-olds that are used to running the office? It didn't. And they literally still own the company, haven't implemented systems, and they're trying to figure out what to do with these old people that just don't want to change. Like literally pen and paper type business for a multi-million-dollar company. Like, it's not simple.
They will leave. They will leave if you say that they're
right. And the problem is they have all of the institutional knowledge in their head, and they know that, and they're like, yeah, tell me what to do, and I'll take everything you own here and just shit it down the drain.
Totally. I mean, and the biggest challenge, right? So going from say stocks to real estate has a ton more variables than, securities and general investments have, right? Those things, they're still somewhat predictable, and they're still a lot of houses, you can kind of put it into a box after a while. When it comes to businesses, it has the completely just unpredictable factor of human beings, right? That all have their own lives with their own complexities, right? There's always these all the industries that you're looking at are completely different. Like, people act like comparing an HVAC business to I don't know, what other things do people buy? Like a clothing store are the same thing. They're not even remotely a restaurant, right? And they completely just ignore that and act like that it's going to be a non-factor, and that somehow when you take over this business, these I don't know, the people just come with it, and there's not going to be any issues. And one of the biggest things I see talked about all the time is oh, you don't need to have the knowledge to run that business. You just take the most senior manager and you put them in charge, and they'll kind of run it for you. And that's why it's passive. What's going to happen is you're going to have the guy that's been there for 20 years. It's going to go, well, this is fucked. I was hoping I was going to be the top guy. He's going to leave.
See ya.
Yep.
It happens all the time.
Totally.
You're completely screwed.
Absolutely.
Your employees are going to want to see some level of competence in the industry from you.
Yes.
Of course.
It's pretty simple.
Especially if it's a trades business. Holy shit. Yeah, those guys aren't going to respect you at all if you don't know anything about their job. It's kind of a challenge too with real estate. Over the last several years, everybody's just been trying to find what is that next highest ROI opportunity, or they just copy what Brandon Turner was doing, whichever one they're doing. They're doing both, right? But when you're looking at investing in real estate, you don't market for higher rents. You do in business, you have to market to grow your business and to bring in sales. In real estate, you don't convert your tenants. You don't do a sales process with your tenants. In business, you have to, right? You're always marketing and selling people on things. Oh, and then you have to deliver it. And there's actually a significant downside to not delivering a good product, as in you give them their money back, or they just sue you, or you lose all your customers because you get a shitty review. On the flip side with a rental property, if you don't get your rent, like, oh, well, like that's not going to completely crush your investment. It's not going to completely crush your business. Like you can fail so much more because it's a slow moving cruise ship as opposed to like a business. It's a Navy SEAL sniper team on a boat going through the ocean.
Totally.
Somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with the asset, like the actual hard asset of real estate is, like I said, it's worth something.
Right.
The stuff goes down.
Your business,
right?
might
A business,
be worth shit.
Your business can literally go for the $1 million, whatever you bought it for, on seller financing because you smooth talked some older operator, or they smooth talk to you because they recognize you're an idiot, right? That can literally go to zero value in 30 days if you don't know what you're doing. Everyone can leave. You can lose your customers. You know, you cannot enforce your billables or whatever you need to be able to be bringing revenue in. Like all that stuff can go to zero if you don't know what the hell you're doing in a very, very fast period of time.
Totally.
No, and I think I want to, tie this back to what we're doing, right? And like when I decided to leave my W-2, it was kind of what you guys preach, like make massive income to go into passive. So that's what building this business is for. And whatever extra money we have is to park it into real estate. I feel like it sounds super simple, a lot harder in practice. But if you guys don't mind going here, in our scale call today, there's actually someone, we won't say who he was. He's like, I've never been inside of a Home Depot. And like you guys challenged him on that because he's like, hey, you might be losing deals because you can't underwrite appropriately.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to understand your business that you're getting into, because it is more than just like I'm investing or this is a business. You have marketing, you have sales, you have to understand your craft, and the better you are at your craft, the more you're going to make, which is honestly also why I think being in business is vastly better than just being a real estate investor.
100%. I mean, well, it has more opportunity and more upside. And, I'm not shitting on like owning businesses at all, obviously, or even like the opportunity that exists with buying these businesses. I just hate the fact that it has become like the newest get rich quick scheme, primarily because it has such huge downside risk for people, not only for those that take action, but also those that don't, that waste all of their time trying to like, I don't know, pretend like they're going to do it, when realistically, if they just went back to what was like more simple, they would probably achieve their financial goals in the next 5 years versus just like joining these circle jerk groups where they just like sit around and talk about businesses that they're pretending to analyze, but they have no intention or ability to actually purchase or run. Totally. Which is like everywhere right now. And now Bigger Pockets is becoming one of the new proponents of that, just like they've done with everything else.
Mental masturbation, as they call it, where you're just talking about things that you'll never do, because it is actually extremely hard to buy a business. It's even harder to start a business. But there's so much fortune and so much value in it if you can build a business or acquire a business that maybe you have some expertise in, which is where I see people be successful. When they know what the business is.
Totally. And what I would say is, if you do want to buy a business, go and start a small business first. Just like, it doesn't have to be that profitable. Just like where you make like, we're gonna make like $100,000 or $200,000 yourself doing something basic, like mowing lawns, cleaning windows, recruit
picking
your
up dog
kid
poop.
Or your neighbor, your friend. Pick up dog shit. I probably like, there's a guy at the Hermosi event that had a dog poop cleanup business that does $5 million a year in Dallas. That's crazy. Right? But just like go and start one of those yourself, just so you kind of learn all the challenges of like the early phase of business. And then if you can figure that out, then if you do want to like collect some capital and go and invest into an existing business, you will be 1,000 times more successful. Totally. Like right out of the gates, and sure, it's going to take time, but so does everything else in life. It's something that needs to happen in the next 12 months. Realistically, it's not going to happen for you. If that's like your goal is you need to leave your job this year, then you're going to have to take some big risks. But the thing is, most people don't want to do that.
I love that though. Like that's a great point of view. And even if it's a side hustle, like to your W-2 or whatever, like start a business. And my advice to people is like, it doesn't really matter what it is. Do you have to be passionate about it? It might help you, but you know what? Usually people don't make money with their passion. So who gives a shit, right? Like being good at business is like a passion of mine, like growing and scaling and making income and all that's a passion. And so you can really get behind it, but it literally doesn't have to be anything. Look for an opportunity, exploit it, start it as a little side hustle, figure out all like the weird headaches that you're going to run into, all like the weird intricacies within that industry and the supply chain to that and how you deliver your product and the systems you need to do for billing, and work on that and see if that's something that really interests you and that you are good at and want to continue to solve problems. Because as the owner of a business, whether you start it or buy it, 90% of your time is just solving problems.
Exactly. And having hard conversations. And there's the other thing too, is once you buy a business and you now have an entire team of staff that you're responsible for, your stupid decisions aren't just screwing with your livelihood; they're screwing with all of theirs
Everybody's.
too. And so it's completely irresponsible to go in and not know what you're doing and just like jump in head first like that. But
Those show.
anyways,
Yeah, that was good, guys. So grenade handled us pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
it was much more cordial than how immediate Dan went off on the
pre-show.
Yeah, that was fun though. So I guess we'll go into the normal scheduled programming. There's one article that I caught our attention that I liked that I hope we can talk about. It's from a wealth of common sense is like what he goes by in like social media and stuff. But his name's Ben Carlson. He's a certified financial analyst with Ritholtz Wealth Management. But he wrote a piece called "The U.S. Real Estate Market in Charts" back on June 30th, 2024. And some of this is kind of chart related, but I'll do the best to explain the best we can, like to the audience. But the first one that kind of starts out here, which just kind of goes into inventory and the way things are moving as a momentum perspective, is the existing home months supply. And what this means is it measures the number of months it would take to sell all of the houses on the market at the current pace of sales, right? So we can kind of see post the great financial crisis.
Yeah,
it was
actually,
mostly down.
I think we can share this for YouTube. Let's do this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Put this up for YouTube.
Yes, go check out our YouTube, and we'll do a little screen share, and you guys can see it.
Collect Keys podcast at YouTube.
Yeah,
on YouTube.
Yeah, you see that, right?
Yeah, no. So the way this has kind of been trending since 2011, 2012, it's basically just been a downward trend. And we had a little hiccup during COVID, obviously, but really it was at 2022 timeframe that we hit the low of 1.6. Meaning it took like 1.6 months to sell all the houses that were currently listed on the market at that time. And now we're up to 3.7, so slightly over doubled. And so I guess it's just telling you houses are taking longer to sell than they were previously. And I don't think that's a surprise to anybody, but what do you guys think is probably the one or top two reasons for that?
I mean, I think there's several reasons. I mean, the affordability reason's the biggest thing, right? But like looking at the chart that we have here, you can see on YouTube it looks like it's just getting back to sort of like pre-pandemic levels. So like, it's definitely not like it was even in like 2019 or 18.
Yep.
But I mean, the affordability thing is always what I think of right away. Because I also see we have this one down lower. We're looking at interest rates.
Yep.
And the interest rates right now
super high.
Are up. It looks like back to 2001.
Yep.
Right. To get interest rates like we're at right now. So like they have been down lower for the last 20 years.
But prices really haven't come down, even though rates have gone up. I think that's the biggest like perplexion that a lot of these people have out there is like, why haven't this happened? And a lot of it goes into the supply and demand for inventory.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the lack of inventory is what is causing most of this, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these home builders now are even like, I don't know if you guys go around your area, but we have new subdivisions kind of popping up all over the place.
Yep.
And the home builders are able to offer things like, hey, you buy a new home, we're going to buy down your rate to 4.5%.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have mostly national home builders doing this, or do you have local home builders? What is your guys'?
I can tell you names and you tell me if they're national or not. DR Horton's a big one around here. Ryan Homes, Fisher Homes.
National. Yep.
How do those companies provide the financing? Do you guys know? Because I literally have no idea. I see their ads.
How they provide the
like
financing?
so when they say that they're going to give you like a 4.5% mortgage if you buy one of their houses, do they have like their own fund or something that they're
I don't,
because obviously they're not
know.
selling
I
it.
definitely
to
know that
Freddie at those
some
rates.
of them do partner with lenders. I don't know, and I know a lot of it too is not. That's actually a variable rate still, and it actually ladders up.
Oh, really?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. So what they'll do is like, we'll get you into 4.5% now. We'll give you the buy down to get you into 4.5%. And then next year it goes to 5.5. Next year after that goes into 6.5, thinking that at some point in time, you'll be able to refinance when rates kind of go where that crossover is with rates. And like, I know like DR Horton here in town, just there's a development down the road from us that they're running. That's what they were advertising. And they have so many tricks. So the difference, like these national home builders, is they're legit, like sold on like on, I don't know where they're at, like the on Wall Street, basically. I don't know what exchange, but they're $1 billion gigantic home builders that have the supply chain similar to something like a Walmart, where they're importing goods on trains and bring them into your town. They're buying land on they can just buy the land bank basically and wait for the right opportunity to strike and build. And then when they do get caught now, like they're so much smarter than they were. So when they can get caught in a recession or a slowdown period like we see now, like they can adjust their prices so much and their lending so much that it makes it to where a single guy who's just going to go out and build 1 or 2 houses can't even compete with. They can go from a $435,000 house to overnight dropping it to $335 with like lending credits. Now, are they going to lose some money? Maybe on some of the houses, but not all of them. And then you got to look at DR Horton. They're building, because real estate's hyper local. They can time everything, right? So they can say, let's offload this inventory and loosen up our cash. Meanwhile, in Austin, Texas, we're still slinging things for 3 times what we're building them for, right? So they're this huge fund where a single small home builder, local home builder just can't even keep up with it.
Yeah, that proves the economies of scale, something that can have though too.
Yeah, and I think also it makes me think of like what's the oil group called OPEC, right? So they can throttle and dump oil into the economy and actually shift the prices of oil that affect the economy, right? So these national home builders can do the same thing. So they can throttle building to keep a constraint up, right? It's like the idea of like diamonds, right? And like there's tons of diamonds in the world, but they only sell so many, so the demand stays high. And the same thing
That's
I think
actually
goes with the housing market. When you have these, I mean, when you come into Spokane, we've never really had national home builders. We have like the 3 or 4 of the biggest national home builders here in town popping up developments left and right, but it's not like they're just flooding the market with these houses. They're in very specific, and they own a lot of
they'd be
land.
shooting themselves in the foot if they overdid it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, which is exactly what they did in 2008, right? Is they were overbuilding all these homes, and then we ended up with all these empty, like brand new homes for years.
That's where I think that they're, they've gotten very smart and they're very savvy, especially I think post 2008, like REITs and, hedge funds buying real estate and all that stuff have gained so much popularity. I think so much money kind of came into the industry that they've just gotten smarter. They've just gotten better people that work in the industry too.
Yeah.
Well, 2008, not to correct Mike, but not only were they overbuilding, but they had what they call ninja loans, which was no income, no job, no assets, and anybody could get a loan.
The 80-25, and like you do like an 80-15-5, where basically you get all of your down payment loaned to you basically over 3 different loans. Yeah, they just some weird stuff.
Wild.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't actually think about them sort of controlling the supply like that, but it makes sense, especially because if you look at the voluntary supply of existing homes, it is relatively low because most people can't afford to go anywhere.
Do you think they have politicians tapping on their shoulders every once in a while? Like
possibly. I would not. I would believe anything at this point in time.
Yeah. Honestly.
But brings up like one of my favorite charts from this guy's article was actually. It's titled U.S. Housing Prices During a Recession. Mike, if you want to bring it up, feel free. Yeah. So it basically lists like 9 different times that we had a recession since 1960. And surprisingly, and this is what was most surprising to me, is like 7 of those 9 still had a positive like price appreciation year, even though we were technically in a recession. It just, everyone remembers 2007, 2009. 1, because it was the most like egregious. It was the biggest one. But 2, it's probably in most people's recent memory.
Especially for the main home buyers right now, which are millennials, right? Like
exactly.
We all know that. Most of us, 2001, we were too young, right? 9/11 was the big thing. And then 90s, a lot of us were super young or not born yet.
It goes back to the supply and demand, right? It is very intuitive when you see that. We all get scared though, and emotionally be like, oh my God, prices are going down. But at a macro level, they really stay up because supply drops, right? Because everybody gets scared. They lay off workers, people start buying less. All of a sudden they start building less, and then people stop moving. I think that's the big part about it. So all of that used inventory just kind of stays there. And the only new inventory coming online is like builders got to build, flippers got to flip, right? And so that's kind of really those people that are actually building the supply, but it's restricted. So we see that price go up. And it's also something that's very well known, but not intuitive, is that the stock market and real estate market are decoupled. They don't go together, even though we see a lot of times it feels like they do.
Well, what's the Fed's like number one defense during a recession is usually to lower rates. And what lower rates do to that chart was up there earlier between like rates and prices. It's a very clear correlation between the two.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then when you're talking on a big level with the big boys, so money gets cheap, guess what the big boys like the DR Hortons and stuff can do? They can go and get more, they can issue more bonds and get more debt at a lower rate. And for like a long time, most companies were, I mean, like they were able to get so much debt. And you saw even like the big dogs like Microsoft and all that stuff issuing a shit ton of debt because it was like free money basically. Why give away shares of your company when the Fed basically is set up to where you can get free money, 0.7%, 2%, 3%. Anytime you can arbitrage or make any get any spread on the interest rates, companies are going to do it because it makes more sense to do that.
I think one thing I learned as I kind of I don't know, got acquainted to more wealthy people is that they can go and take a loan against like their brokerage account for stupid cheap money too. Like 2% of like their stock portfolio. And that's just a way that they have to buy more stuff that the average Joe doesn't.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. My father-in-law, he did that to buy a boat, a very expensive boat. You know what I mean? He's just like, why would I not? He's like, just put it over here into this cash account and then I can get a boat. You know?
I mean, and one of the things too, with a lot of this is, you know, honestly, there's a large number of people right now that are fucking crushing it. Like, just to be honest, like they have successful businesses. They have a huge amount of asset value from their homes, from their stocks, from their crypto, from whatever else that they owned that boomed during the recession, not during the recession, during COVID. Right. So I just looked up really quick on Wikipedia, which they said in school I'm not supposed to use, but fuck you, Bozeman High School.
It's a decent source.
Yeah, and so the statistic they have on here is that of homes in the United States, 67.4% of them are occupied by the unit's owner. That means that's almost 70% of people that owned an asset that freaking boomed over the past couple of years. So they have a ton of buying power, right? Even if they don't have an incredible amount of income, they have the ability to move places where it's a lower cost of living. That's why you saw so many people leaving places like Seattle and California and Austin to go to these like lower cost living areas, is because they were very literally selling their home in California for $1 million and moving into a $400,000 home in Spokane, Washington, and banking the other $600,000 that they can now do whatever they want with, right?
Yep. Capital gains free and everything.
That's why one of my strongest beliefs, like, I don't know if this is great sound financial advice, but this is what I've done. This is what I believe is you should always, for your primary residence, live in the most expensive home that you can comfortably afford. Because think about this: if you go and buy a house like in an average interest rate, not right now, but 4 or 5% interest rate time, and you buy a house that's $100,000 more than like you currently live in, maybe that affects your mortgage like $300, $400, $500 a month, so $6,000 a year. But the percentage gain of that over a long period of time as it compounds is so much more than you saving a few $100 because you're worried about the scratch today. But if you can comfortably afford it, it makes so much sense to own a home in Southern California, so that when you do want to downsize and sell that $4 million home and move up to Spokane, like we see all the time, or Idaho, you see this all the time. People move up there, buy $1 million, 8,000 square foot home in the mountains, and they can totally afford it. And now they're set up with a huge chunk of equity. Home ownership is still a way to make wealth.
And you see that at an even more extreme level when you get into like the super upper classes, right? Like you have these celebrities that had their $20 million homes that they bought in 2017 that they're now selling for $70 million, right? Like that's crazy. But like I think it was Mark Wahlberg just had one that he did literally that. Like they built it for like 23 million and just sold it for like 70 something million or something crazy.
He's building a house in Coeur d'Alene.
I bet he is, because he got to park fucking $50 million somewhere.
But they told him, they're like, bro, you can't build that. It was up in Gaza Ranch here. They're like, yeah, you can't build that here. It's too much. Like, that's too much.
Kanye will be jealous, dude.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do that. It's too much. One last comment I guess I would make on this when it comes to supply and demand and just prices, and why I personally think this is it, is that we have at the same time, due to circumstances, the two largest generations in American history buying or not buying houses. Millennials got delayed, and they're either buying their first time homes now or they're upgrading. And baby boomers are dying in place. Their parents all moved into, old folks' homes because it was all reasonable. Their pension and Social Security covered it. They all traveled the world for 10 years, went to their old folks' home, and then just retired in a very comfortable setting. Now that inventory is not getting loosened up, right? So there's a ton of huge baby boomer generation dying in place. and then you have these millennials who are trying to buy or stepping up, and those are huge generations of people.
So sort of like to wrap up this conversation, since this is a real estate investing business show, how do you take all this knowledge and apply it towards your guys' business, your business decisions?
Well, me personally, like I kind of like the area, go back to like appreciation versus cash flow, which we were kind of just getting at. You buy the nicest house, but the appreciation is going to make more than whatever. I find areas now that, yes, I still want the cash flow positive, but if it's like on that path of progress or a gentrifying area, right? Like those to me, like you get a good bird deal or flip out of there, you're still going to make like hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
And that's kind of like my biggest like recent takeaway from a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, totally. I think it's that change in mindset from like buying for cash flow or mailbox money and really going to, what David Green, who I don't like to quote necessarily because he's kind of a weirdo, but he has this famous saying that cash flow is a defensive metric, right? And, you should be using that cash flow basically to maintain the properties while the appreciation builds wealth. I think now more than ever, that is such a true sentiment that I would say, Dan and I have definitely taken with our holdings, but all of the smartest people that we've met that are like legit operators, they're taking that same view, and they are pretty much only keeping assets so they can either force appreciation through some kind of value add that is very simple, right? And very clear. It's not like, well, I'm hoping that I can increase the rents this much. It's like, I am adding square footage. I am adding like additional living space. I am increasing cash flow in some way. Or they are buying, like you said, in A-class areas like Path of Progress, where the value is not going to be going anywhere. Like when we had Cora Johnson on the show, he was saying that he started only doing buy and holds in San Diego. Because he's like, you want to know what's not going to be a less desirable place to live? Freaking San Diego, where it's 85 degrees every single year, like all year round, right? You literally can't build in any direction because you have the desert on the east side, you have the ocean on the west side, you have the Air Force Base up north. And so he's just buying all these properties down there that are basically zero cash flow, but he knows they're going to be worth more in the future. Just because, like, why wouldn't it?
Yeah, no matter what people say about California, it's still a nice place to live.
Yeah, it's like when Brandon Turner moved to Hawaii and he was worried about that. And, his thought was like, well, no one's ever going to not want to live in Hawaii. I think that's pretty dang true.
Exactly. I would sum it up in like the way I look at it is from a very tactical business standpoint is I'm wholesaling and I'm flipping to make cash so that I can take big swings and invest in good real estate because as you guys have both said, good real estate appreciates, and also the freaking tax benefits when you're flipping and you're wholesaling and you're making $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year as a solo operator doing this, like get some of that freaking tax benefit. Put some of that money in there to get that benefit.
This is my realization is I made more in taxes for 2023 than I made as my old W-2.
Yeah.
Like,
I paid twice.
But I didn't buy enough real estate last year. That's the problem. Like,
Mike knows my tax situation. I'm basically paying probably twice my annual salary as an engineer, like in taxes, which is not a good thing. Like it's not good.
No,
I'm not really feeling good about it.
For the audience though, like you can get super granular with like, if you're like, okay, what's Path of Progress? Well, one, ask people in the area, they're going to know if they're like good people in that market. But two, like a lot of the people will be like, you can find how many permits are pulled in a zip code, right? Yeah. Like you can go into this and get really, really data driven on if that's like the type of personality that you have.
Yeah. If you want to know where the Path of Progress is, go find where the cutest farmer's market is, and you go there and you're afraid you might get stabbed while you're there. Yeah. So you're buying organic carrots, but you're also afraid for your life at the same time.
The same place.
That is totally. The Path of Progress.
Yeah. You get a cup of like hipster coffee while you're there.
Totally. Exactly. And you step over a needle. Good spot to go. Yeah. Totally. That also reminds me to like not needles, but where's your government forcing you to invest? Like, where are they giving tax benefits for real estate investors to benefit? We have that in Spokane. You have like federal opportunity zones. You also have like growth boundaries. You have just different things where the city planners and the county planners want growth to happen. And they'll literally make it like create opportunity for people. And you'll see the developers go there, which creates that path of progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the government provides those incentives for a reason. It's not purely just to, make it so that Elon can give you more middle fingers, right? The tax incentives they provide people, it is to incentivize them to actually do things that they believe will stimulate the economy and stimulate the greater growth of everything.
Texas, let's be honest, is probably a caveat. They're like, I don't know. No government. Build whatever
Well,
you want, wherever you want.
It's like we talked about during the scale call today. In Texas, it's all about whose daddy is as what seat on the city commission, and that's really all that matters.
It's good old boy. Yeah.
Well,
Cool, guys. That's all I had to for today. And you guys got anything else you want to report?
No, I think that's a good place to start.
No, I'm
Stop
feeling good.
there. So cool. Well, thanks, Dylan, for digging that up. Awesome, guys. Well, thanks for listening to today's show. You should shoot us a follow on Instagram. It really helps out a ton. And you can see more content that we throw out there. So I'm at Mike_invests. Dylan, what's your Insta?
You're going to get it eventually. It's this 11D Cook.
I like to
You have to
make you
spell
say
it,
it,
dude.
though.
It's Koch. You got to spell it.
Yeah,
It does
you're right.
not
I'll-
appear to be Cook.
Yeah.
Well, you did
a
it for me,
Koch.
so
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah. And then Dan is at InvestorMan Dan. And shoot us a follow, send us a DM, let us know what you think. You should really do me a favor and go and DM Dylan and let him know what you think about him being on the show. And you should ask him if we're legit or we're completely blown smoke, because he'll probably give you a different answer.
Give you an honest
than,
answer.
Dan and I would give you an honest answer. So go shoot Dylan a DM on Instagram. Let him know what he thinks. And yeah, appreciate you guys listening.
See
Talk to you
y'all.
guys next week.
See ya.